Greetings, and welcome back to Megan Writes, and my continuing writing blog. Today I'm going to go through plotting my novel. Now I detailed the basic plot of my novel in my last vlog, but a few things are changing, and I want to go through the plot points more directly. Most writers might decide to plot before they even start writing, when they just have the basic concept and want to turn it into a plot for a book. I already have my stupid draft done, and now want to take all the ideas I threw down on paper and make it more coherent. The main thing I'm changing from my original idea is the narration of the book. I had originally thought of having Emma be the narrator, since she discovers the library for herself, but I realized that the story really isn't about her. She doesn't have enough involvement in the main story to warrant her narrating. It really is more about Nilsen and Brighton. I had originally thought it would be a unique take on the story, being from an outside perspective, but I realized that it just wasn't engaging enough. I realized I brought over this concept from my Good Omens fanfiction that inspired this story. In that story, it was interesting to see the characters that were already established where the reader knew the general story from an outside perspective. But with my all-new characters that the reader isn't familiar with yet, it doesn't actually add anything to, if anything it would detract from, the story as a whole. So I'm shifting my narration from first person to third person omniscient. I figured since the story is mainly about Nilsen and Brighton's developing relationship, that we would want the narration closer to them, but I didn't want to jump between first-person perspectives or lose our initial discovery of the library with Emma. I like to play around with perspectives sometimes, but I don't think this is the story to do that with. So now that I've changed up the perspective, I want to go in and plot what I already have and add ideas for scenes with maybe just Nilsen and Brighton, or either of them away from the library. Before, I was limiting myself to things that Emma could witness at the library, but now we can explore a lot more. I'm going to try to keep some things a bit vague. I'll go through the plot up to where I described it before, but then I'll probably be a bit more obtuse about any of the plot after that. I don't want to give away the ending before it's even written. So we'll start with us following Emma when she discovers the library, with her view and all of the library and all of its books. Then we'll have a scene with Emma talking to Nilsen and learning more about him and the library. I can then introduce Brighton, and we can see them with Nilsen and both their interactions at first. I'll have a scene where Emma comments to Nilsen about how sweet his relationship with Brighton is, but Nilsen will deny it's a relationship. Then we'll have him contemplating his feelings later. I'll include some scenes of how Brighton and Nilsen's interactions then change over time as they slowly realize how they feel about each other. There'll be a scene in there somewhere with how they met. We'll have a scene with the holiday gift exchange and Nilsen and Brighton finally admitting to each other how they feel. Then the scene with Brighton's issues with their family and how Nilsen feels when Brighton is away. Then we'll have Emma's plot to bring them back together. A scene with Brighton's confrontation with Emma about her plot. We'll have that minor conflict's resolution. Then we'll introduce the big conflict and that conflict's resolution. We'll get a scene of respite from conflict with some slice of life scenes. I'll introduce our major conflict, and I'll make sure to sprinkle in hints at the major conflict earlier in the story to tie it into the plot more. There will be scenes of attempts and failures to resolve the major conflict, then the final resolution and the ending. Now as I plot this out, the major conflict feels tacked on at the end, even though I plan on including foreshadowing earlier on. I think I might actually move the introduction of the major conflict back to when Brighton is away. That way, the minor conflict and the big conflict are buried within the major conflict of the story, and have to be resolved before our characters can resolve the major conflict. And then the ending will have a more satisfactory conclusion since the major conflict is present through most of the novel before it's resolved. I will also move the respite slice of life scene between the minor resolution and the big conflict since the major conflict is now introduced earlier. I'm going to add some notes in to detail which scenes I want to hint at the major conflict so it feels more connected and not just out of the blue. I will put hints when Emma is talking to Nilsen and in some of the scenes with Nilsen and Brighton starting to realize their feelings. This already feels like a more cohesive storyline than I originally had, or even what developed in my stupid draft. For my writing, I'm glad I waited until after my stupid draft to plot my novel, because based on my initial idea, with everything from Emma's perspective, I think the plot would have come out a lot different. For me, it was nice to be able to play around and see where the story took me and what it actually wanted to be about in my stupid draft, rather than adhering to my initial idea. This plotting has given me some good structure, and a lot more confidence going into my first draft. Join me in my next vlog, where I will begin writing out my first draft and see how many words I can get together in about a week or two. Let me know what you think, and what things you would like to know more about the story and its characters. Make sure to like and subscribe for more vlogs. And as always, I hope you all have a wonderful day.